So, learners, you have reached this chapter of Basics of Economics, chapter number 8, which is talking about poverty in India. Now, this particular area of study is very important, and at the same time, it's really still sad because we find that after so many years of independence, also, India still grapples with the problem of poverty. So we are going to start with the understanding of what exactly is poverty, how do you define it, what is the importance of the understanding of poverty in economics, how do we deal with this particular problem of poverty. That means first we need to understand what are the causes of poverty, and once you understand the causes of poverty, we can also understand how to deal with poverty and to eradicate it. So, what kind of measures can be taken to eradicate the poverty in the country? So, all these things are what we will be learning and covering in this chapter number 8 of poverty in India. So, let us first understand what do you mean by poverty. So, whenever we speak of this word poverty, you will exactly have the image of a person like this in your mind, sitting on the street, having nothing to eat, right? Maybe having some, wearing some clothing which is torn and which is not very clean, having a setup where it's a very unclean type of environment, right? So this is what comes to your mind when I say poverty, correct? So exactly, if we have to put this in words, we say often defined as non-fulfillment of basic needs. So what are the basic needs? Normally what we say, food, clothing, shelter. This is basic needs. Now mobiles and all, I'm not talking about that, but there are basic needs of human beings, food, clothing and shelter. Still, these are basic needs. And if these two are not fulfilled, that means definitely that person will come in the category of poverty. Now, why poverty happens is because lack of sufficient income. So, this is two parts clubbed in this understanding of poverty. One is that the basic necessities are not fulfilled, and why they are not fulfilled? Because the availability of that specified required income is not there. Look at this multi-dimensional poverty. There are two parts, as we saw, the non-fulfillment of material dimensions like food, clothing, shelter, health, education, roads, electricity, etc. Now, there could also be non-material dimensions which are associated with social discrimination. That means you may find that there is caste system, there is educated, uneducated, there is cultured, non-cultured. These kind of discriminations and dimensions may also exist, which lead to, you can say, the other aspects of poverty. So you may not just be poor in terms of material possessions, you may be poor in terms of social status, and this social status need not always be in terms of money. Now we are going to talk about Amartya Sen, who is a very noted economist of India, and he also had got Bharat Ratna and Nobel Economic Prize, which was granted to him in the year 1998 in economic science. He has made a lot of contribution to welfare economics and social choice theories. In the year 1981, he had written a very noted book, uh, which was titled as "Poverty and Famine," an essay on entitlement and deprivation. So, entitlement and deprivation, these are very important terms in economics. In this, he revealed a lot of things about wages, unemployment, rising food prices, etc. Now, what was his main idea about this entire term of poverty was that he said that it's not just poverty in terms of material things. That means that is an important thing, of course, but at the same time, you will lose your value if you're not able to get the ultimate, highest, potential as a human being. If you don't reach that potential of what you are capable of, that also can be considered as poverty. So that this is a very beautiful term, because it's not just that you are having everything, food, clothing, shelter, you're having the basic necessary materialistic things, and then you say you're rich or you're okay and having a fine lifestyle. No, what he said, that even if you're capable of becoming somebody, or you're capable of contributing something to society, but you don't do it, you're unable to do it because of n number of reasons, then also you are considered to be as facing poverty, or you are poor. Okay, so it's something very deep what he has noted and what he has stated. Now, coming to the different concepts of poverty as they exist. Now, in the concepts of poverty, the first important concept which we have is absolute poverty. Now, absolute poverty, how was it measured? It was measured with the help of understanding the calorie intake of a person in a day. So, minimum calorie intake was defined. Okay, if you have a minimum calorie intake of 2400 in the rural areas, and you should have a minimum calorie intake of 2100 in urban areas. So if the person is unable to get this particular intake in the day, then there is poverty. This is something connected to underdeveloped countries, specifically in India. Now, of course, this particular term of absolute poverty is mostly gone off, so it's no longer existent, at least in India. Now we come to the next concept of poverty, which is called as relative poverty. Often we say, if even if you get a car, you find the neighbor's car or somebody else's car as bigger than yours, or you say, okay, my house is having currently a 2 BHK house, it is there, I want a 3 BHK house. Somebody is having a villa, and then you see that, okay, I feel poor because I am looking at the villa, right? So this is what we are talking of is relative poverty. We are not poor, but when we compare it with somebody else, we find ourselves poor. So this is not something which is standardized or defined, but it is relative. It is something which is in terms of differences in income, wealth, consumption patterns, any kind of economic activity which a person is doing. So all these can lead to understanding of a term which we call as relative poverty. Okay, so it's not absolute. Absolute is in terms of calorie intake and all, it's very clearly defined, but relative poverty is not a clearly defined terms. It's more like comparative, and then you say, okay, this is poor, that is rich, and all that. Now, another important concept is what we call is the poverty line. Now, why this particular part is important in economics is because we need to understand how many people fall below the poverty line in this country, how many people are above this poverty line, because below poverty line means really issues are there. So the less the people are in that category of below poverty line, the better it is, right? Now, how is this poverty line defined? In certain areas, we find in certain time frames, we find economics uses poverty line to be defined in terms of the per capita expenditure. Okay, so per capita, how much is the expenses of that particular household? So now these definitions mostly are concentrated on the term of poverty line based on the per capita expenditure. So this is the minimal expenditure which is expected to occur because you need to survive. So you need food, clothing, shelter, you need the basic amenities and facilities. So clubbed together, your expenditure would be this much. It is how it is computed. And if you fall below that expenditure, then naturally you would come below the poverty line. So the main aim of Niti Aayog in India, which we are going to study later, Niti Aayog and all that, that the main aim of this Niti Aayog was to eradicate poverty and bring the people above the poverty line. So now what does this poverty line fulfill? What are the objectives? One by one, if we have to see, this defines how many people are falling above poverty line, how many people are falling below poverty line, right? Secondly, they identify based on the consumption expenditures, right? Whether that particular household is identified or as poor or not. Then third one is they would track how much is the poverty in a particular region over a time frame, and they would also do comparisons with other regions. Then estimates could also be made of how much expenditure the state or the country has to make to bring these people above the poverty line, right? Because if the state has to contribute, they have to do some take some measures on these people, then what would they be? What would be the amount of expenditure on those measures? Okay, so all this is defined, and all this is taken into consideration. Now, when we talk of poverty line in terms of expenditure, the World Bank had defined poverty line as to be $1.90 per day. If the expenditure falls below this of any person, then the person is considered to be as below the poverty line. So, on that basis, if we have to count the expenditure and see how many people in India fall below poverty line, then actually we would find 21.2% of the entire population which lives below poverty line. So this was what we understood about poverty in this particular part. Now in the next part we are going to understand what are the types of poverty, a little bit more broader terms in that, and then we are going to talk about the Indian situation of poverty, causes of poverty. Okay, so let's proceed to the next part.